first, I will present to you quickly the PREVENT activities on EPR. But of course, I'm not alone today, and I'm very glad that Fanny Quertamp and Sabine Bartnick join us today as practitioners with really vast experience on the ground. Fanny is a national senior advisor at Expertise France, and she's working on the project Rethinking Plastics, Circular Economy Solutions to Marine Litter, and she will present some lessons learned from Vietnam today. And Sabine Bartnick is Managing Director at Cyclos, and she will present lessons learned and best practices from Tunisia. So very much looking forward to your inputs. Thank you for joining. Yeah, like I said, first I will give you a brief overview on the activities of the Prevent Waste Alliance on EPR for packaging. Most of you probably already are aware of these activities or even might be involved in these activities, but don't worry, I'll keep it short. So as you know, Prevent, together with its members and partners, had elaborated a toolbox on EPR for packaging that was published in 2020, and it includes different fact sheets, country reports, also video series, exercises, and so on. And GSI projects and other actors really use it as a standard document for their work in different countries. For example, the Rethinking Plastic project has translated the toolbox for Vietnam, China, Thailand, and Indonesia. And Spanish translations are also ongoing from another GSI project. And in the meantime, the EPR toolbox has already been downloaded over 1,200 times from our website. So that's really good news that it's really used. And Prevent has furthermore supported different stakeholders to connect with EPR experts and other peers. And we also organized different events, for example, at the World Circular Economy Forum last year. And we also organized sparring sessions with member organizations. And just last week, we have also published our updated EPR toolbox that it and a new background document on the topic, how can different approaches complement EPR schemes? And the motivation behind this new edition is that often practitioners who are in the process different financing or organization mechanisms for a circular economy, like municipal waste fees, cash for trash, plastic credits, or even CO2 taxes, although this is not so common. And they may wonder if these approaches may hinder or support EPR schemes. So we evaluated this in this new fact sheet, and you can download it as of now from our website that you can see here on the slide. And beside these updates, Prevent has also been working on the idea of a one-stop shop for EPR together with UNEP, OECD, WWF, and also other organizations. And those of you who have already joined on Monday, you may have already listened to the pitch delivered by Feng Wang from UNEP. So I won't repeat all the details of the one-stop shop. If you would like to learn more about it, you can either watch the pitch from Feng on our YouTube channel. It will be uploaded probably on Monday, or you can directly contact us. And with this, I'd like to close my introduction, and I'm very happy that we will now listen to two very practical examples on setting up an EPR scheme. And we will start with the example of Vietnam presented by Fanny, and then we will directly move on to the example from Tunisia presented by Sabine. And afterwards, we will have enough time to clarify all your questions and discuss together. And yeah, of course, feel free to use the chat already now for questions or comments, and we will pick them up later. So please, Fanny, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I think I would like to thank you first, Angelina, for this great introduction, and thanks Prevent Waste Alliance for all the support that you have provided to Rethinking Plastic team in Vietnam especially, but in the other countries as well. So I'm Fanny Carton, and I work for Expertise France, and I will speak today on behalf of the team GIZ Expertise France of the project Rethinking Plastics Circular Economy Solution to Marine Litter that was funded by the European Union and the BMZ. And I was in charge of the implementation of the project in Vietnam. Maybe next slide. Yeah, just a little bit introduction before going on the practical activities. So I'm not an expert on EPR, but I have the pleasure to assist our partners, especially the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment in Vietnam, and more specifically the Legal Affairs Department was in charge of the elaboration of the legal framework on EPR. EPR is not new in Vietnam, but of course it's emerging concept, and it has been developed in the 2000s, but more practically in 2015. With a focus on specifically on the recovery of e-waste product, but due to several reasons that I will not explain here, the implementation on the field of this regulatory system was not very efficient, and most of the decision and process were more on a voluntary mechanism. That's why in 2019, the Legal Affairs Departments decided to support and to move forward a more mandatory system and start with the packaging waste. Through our collaboration, the first support that we have provided is joint elaboration of a policy brief on EPR for packaging waste in Vietnam. And we have the contribution of a French CTO, and this policy brief outlines the key elements and options for introducing EPR for packaging in Vietnam based on its current situation, and try to provide some insights on a very large scale and how it will benefit in Vietnam from different point of view, environmental, economic and social point of view. And this policy brief aims to also provide general information and knowledge to the policy maker at the high level and the National Assembly in order to support the introduction of the principle of EPR in the law on environmental protection that has been revised in 2020. I would like also to highlight as a key lesson learned from our perspective, the role of the EPR national platform that has been established at the early process in Vietnam, and that contributes to develop a dialogue platform on different topics, and step by step, more and more in deep in the topic from general aspect with private sector, government official, of course, and a lot of international organizations and NGOs also involved in the process. All our documents are available on the Rethinking Plastic website if you want to have more information. Next slide, please. Another lesson learned and practices that we wanted to also highlight is the role of the informal and formal sectors in Vietnam in the perspective of the implementation of an EPR scheme. And we have conducted a study on in 6 different cities, from big cities like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City and secondary cities, to highlight the diversity and the complexity of the system. It's not black and white and a formal and informal system in 2 different parts, but most of them we realize that is a hybrid system that will be very interesting, but also challenging when the implementation of the national regulation arrive on the different territories. As I mentioned, big cities, but also smaller cities. So we wanted to analyze to make a diagnostic on the existing roads, how it works in the different city, how they are organized, how the informal sectors from the collectors to the aggregators and to the recyclers are organized, what are their role and their capacity in the current value chain. And our main findings is, of course, system is very complex, hybrid, and is very diverse on the territory, but also among the different typology of the stakeholders. This sector, as a lot of countries, is still unrecognized and vulnerable, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that we can observe a lot of difficulties for this sector. And the modalities of the integration create some opportunities, but also challenges to their integration, as they are not recognized in their status, in the juridical status, and they are also organized, but in a way that it will be very challenging to integrate them, regarding especially the requirements in terms of traceability. It's something that we have tried also to highlight to the policymaker to be sure that this circular economy approach will integrate also this social dimension. Next slide, please. We have translated the EPR toolbox at the early stage of the project, and I would say that it was really important in the process for discussing, for sharing the knowledge, especially on the module 2 and module 3. Even the module 1 was very interesting, but the process of elaboration of the legal framework was ongoing. So it will bring a little bit confusion if we start from scratch. But I would say that for the 3 modules, it gives an overall overview of the relationship among the different stakeholders. And based on this translation, that it was not only a translation, but also an adaptation and a contextualization with 3 local experts who support us to really transfer the concept, the vocabulary, and also the knowledge. And based on this translation, we have organized capacity building on EPR with the Academy of Managers for Construction and City, the AMC, and we have organized 3 training courses for around 25 participants, as we can say, level 1. And then we have selected 12 to 15 future multipliers and lecturers that we organize a specific training course for them. And we have developed a brief guide for practitioners in Vietnam, so they can be more comfortable about general knowledge about EPR, and more specifically in their topic and in their city, they can be future pillar for dissemination of EPR knowledge and implementation. The last document that we will publish shortly, probably next week, is the EPR Q&A handbook. It will be available only in Vietnamese, but it has been elaborated by the legal affairs departments of the Monterey. And it aims to also clarify and to be a practical guide for private sector, for companies who are new in the sector and they usually don't know much about EPR, what will be their obligations, their rights, what kind of formula they need to fulfill at what date. So it's really a practical guide, and we have been inspired by the interactive PDF from the EPR toolbox, and we make a similar tool with an interactive document, so it will be very easy for practitioner, private sector, to get information and to refer to all the annexes in Vietnamese for the formula to be fulfilled, and all the key information and key contacts. So it's mostly adaptation of the new decree on EPR that has been published early in 2022 and will be in force at the beginning in January 23. So it provides clarification on what the legal documents are saying and what will be the concrete action that the private sector need to refer, what they need to register, what kind of information they need to provide. So this kind of handbook will be only available in the first step in Vietnamese, and it will be uploaded on the EPR portal and website of the Legal Affairs Department. Yeah. We also have supported a pilot project that has been implemented in Ho Chi Minh City by IRD, Institut National pour le Développement, and the University of Architecture of Hanoi. I will not go too much into details, but this pilot project, despite the COVID-19 pandemic that create a lot of barrier to have some specific field surveys, we have developed evidence-based approach based on the chemical typology and not the ongoing practical typology. So we have compared all the definitions and what is used in reality by the different stakeholders, including the collectors, the recyclers, including the definition in the regulation. And we can see that there is a lot of gaps between this typology and definition, and there is a need for standardization of the typology and the procedure. We have been working also in collaboration with the Vietnam, the new entity that has been established in 2019, but is more operational now. And with their support, we have used also a microphysir portable spectrometer to also check what the gaps between what is collected and with this typology and what need to be referred regarding the typology which is in the legal framework, and we can see the difference and fulfill the gaps in the coming times. The team also has developed a Plastigo smartphone application to record data. So it's not an application that put in connection the demand and the offer, or the households and the collectors, but it's more for internal use for all the collectors and maybe the future aggregators or the future pro entity who needs to have this traceability. So it's more a tool for traceability to record the data. And I think that this application has been developed, and unfortunately not applicated in the field due to COVID situation, but we hope that it can serve for future utilization if, of course, ministry or pro are interested. We have published a lot of fact sheets that you can also find on the website that describe the main organization in Ho Chi Minh City, but also the work that has been done. We also have organized a workshop in Hanoi with students to see practically on the collection point how EPR branding can appear and can also become something familiar with the communities, but I will not develop it here, but I think it's also very interesting work on that field. Next slide. And maybe just a few words on the EPR scheme under the Environmental Protection Law. I will not detail, and it is based, of course, on the documentation from the Legal Affairs Departments of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment in Vietnam, and is basically the scheme that has been approved. So it's based on the classical, I would say, EPR, but with one specificity. Is existing Vietnam Environmental Protection Fund so in fact the producer will have two options. The first option is to go through the Vietnam Environmental Protection Fund and to finance this fund that will be in charge of the collection and the recycling, or the producer can go through directly through recycling through one PRO entity that is set up or will be set up in future in Vietnam. They can go directly with individuals with recycler, or they can outsource for recycling. So there are different options. It's a pragmatic approach that the MONRE has decided to move forward, to give the option for the producers regarding their size, especially for the big one, for international producer, but also domestic one. So it's something that is still in discussion for practice, for operationality, but this is a specific, I think, component of the EPR mechanism and scheme in Vietnam. I will not go into this detail, but I wanted just to highlight this specific option. And maybe next slide. There is a roadmap for different products. 6 sectors have been mentioned in the decree and regarding EPR, and the Vietnam will start with packaging. I don't have here the agenda, but if you are interested, I can also share with you the agenda for each sector, but they will start with the packaging sector that will be in force next year, with a white year to stabilize and to define the different process. Next slide. Still a lot of difficulties and challenging to set up the EPR operating system with the digital portal, registration, intergovernmental collaboration, especially with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, to develop also guidelines for management of use of EPR funds, especially with the Vietnam Environmental Protection Fund, and also the process regarding the PRO. So a lot of questions regarding the transparency of the financial flows as well. A major focus on waste separation at source, collection fees by volume, and also regarding the diversity of the territories, 63 provinces in Vietnam, how to implement this scheme at local level with the lack of public finance. Interprovincial and interregional plans to also collect and recycling, to optimize the resource, especially on recycling plants that are not now set up in all the territory in Vietnam, and all the guidance on classification, collection and recycling for each type of product and packaging, and to continue the active involvement of different stakeholders in that field. I think that I will stop here with remaining challenge to develop also the governance of the EPR, which is very important step to build the trust among the different stakeholders. Thank you very much for listening, and happy to discuss further.
You're muted, Angelina.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thanks for the hint. Sorry for that. I was just saying thank you to Fanny for the great presentation, and congratulations to you and the whole Rethinking Plastics team. Great work you've done so far in Vietnam. If that's okay for the speakers, I will now hand over directly to Sabine to present a case from Tunisia. I see there are already some questions to Fanny in the chat. I will save them for later, and then we'll have time to discuss and answer all your questions. So Sabine, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much also for the opportunity to share our experiences of this project. Next slide, please. The project was realized from November 2017 to April 2020 and then extended to April 21. That was due to Corona because we couldn't realize all the steps we planned. So there are three important areas we had to cover: raise awareness, diagnostic and evaluation of the existing system, and develop solutions and approaches for optimization. The project was a develop PPP project and co-financed by GIZ, and we were two main project partners, Cyclos and Envero from Rostock, and we had also other partners from the country, from Tunisia itself. Next slide. In Tunisia, there is already a law that includes ideas of EPR since 1996, quite a long time already. So there were two main possibilities, as there are in many countries and EPR schemes. On the one hand, producers could find a solution on their own, or they could entrust the responsibility to authorized companies. In Tunisia, only the second model was realized by Enjet under the lead of Enjet. Next slide. This is a very basic scheme how the institutional framework is. The Ministry of Environment is responsible for the Enjet. Enjet is the National Waste Management Agency. And Enjet was our main partner in this project because Enjet is running the ECO-Lef-System. That's a national packaging recovery system. It's not really EPR because it's state-run. And I will explain a bit more on the next slides. So the ECO-Lef-System was established more than 20 years ago. And as you all know, 2011 was a great change in Tunisia with the revolution. And that had also impact on this scheme. The Enjet is Agence Nationale de Gestion des Déchets, is responsible for the administration and enforcement. So two different roles in one institution. That's not common for an EPR system. Normally that are different actors. And only a very small proportion of the funding required for the system comes from the fillers, producers or distributors of packed goods. The main budget of ECO-Lef is fed from the FODEP. That's a fund of depollution, and this is fed from revenue from the eco-tax. Eco-tax is relevant in Tunisia, and it has to be paid for importing plastic goods, but not packaging filled with goods. So it doesn't cover all the packaging. Eco-tax is paid on is a share on the turnover of the imported goods. The decision of the budget is not made. The decision is not made by Enjet. about the budget is made by the Ministry of Finance. And so there's no really a reliable financement of the ECO-Lef-System. If the amount collected and recycled via the system decreases, then also the budget decreases. So there's a development of decreasement. And there's no incentive for innovation, and most recyclables are marketed outside of ECO-Lef. That was the situation where we started our project. Next slide. Some information about collection and recycling of packaging waste in Tunisia. As in a lot of countries in Africa, the informal sector has a very important role. But as you know, informal sector is not the informal sector. There are very different kind of organizational forms under the informal sector. It begins with a waste picker that picks the waste by hand, and it ends in kind of sort of company with already equipment like trucks. And the amount of collected packaging via ECO-Lef decreased. The highest point was 15,700 tons in 2009. And then it decreased. 2018, it was 3,800 tons that was collected and recycled via ECO-Lef. And that's only a very small part of the packaging waste, and the concentration was on PET bottles and films. And only household packaging materials with a market value are collected. There's no separate collection in general by the final consumer. There's only residual waste produced by the consumer. So the sorting doesn't take place at the source. Packaging waste is mainly disposed via residual waste and delivered to landfills or dump sites or even littered. And the lack of data on packaging was also a very important point put on the market, as well as the composition of the packaging waste. And there are no targets for the collection or recycling. Some impressions on the next slide. For the kind of collection that takes place in Tunisia. Up left, you see an open truck that's on the way to the landfill, and as you can imagine, a lot of waste was lying along the streets. And they also have trucks as we know them here, and there are different kind of collections, mainly the big bins, as you see on the left down. On the downside, they stand in the street and are available for all people passing by. There are certain models to collect it in a way that the informal sector has an easy grip on this material, as you see in the cage. A bit yellow because the picture was taken at night at the beach of Hammamet. And you see a project that was already developed also with GIZ. That are cages in the street of Tunisia where the informal collector can open the cage and take out the PET bottles. And on the right hand up, you see a collection point of ECO-Lef with a bale press. The next slide. There are certain ways the informal collector collects the packaging waste. It's from households or other producers or from retailers, and also on municipal landfills there are waste collectors picking out the waste that has a value on the market. I want to show you one example. We visited in a suburb area of Tunisia. Next slide. That's not our project, but I think it's an interesting project. It's financed by International Alert, and that's called Trier, c'est aider. That means separation is a help. So the waste should be placed in a way that the informal collector can collect it easily. You see the second picture is a kind of motorbike with a cage which is co-financed by this project. And they mainly collect clean PET bottles, so they can be shredded at the place you see on the fourth picture and later on exported. Some examples carried out activities within the project. We had a lot of meetings with responsible persons, especially en JET, to discuss possibilities of future system, because ECO-Lef, that was an insight everyone has that who works in this system, is not a future model anymore in this kind of structure. So the discussion was, what is the future EPR scheme for Tunisia? We had an analysis of the existing ECO-Lef-System, and from that on we developed possible solutions. And we had a visit of representatives of ENGET in Germany, workshops with different stakeholders, especially producers, international and national companies. So you see, communication and capacity building is a very important part, because if there is not an information on a comparable level, then you have very hard discussions. And there is always kind of fear, if there is a change of an existing system coming. So that was very important to have this time, and we learned a lot about that. Only reading about the ideas is not enough. You have to discuss it. So it's important to be present and not only online. That was our very important experience. We had lectures in universities. We had the integration of a civil society. We had the discussions with the civil society, and we had a legal examination of possible forms of organization and further proposals. And we also published a video with a local partner in Arabic about ideas on EPR and why it is important for Tunisia and what are the chances with EPR. That's quite a new thing. It was published in the social media and had a lot of clicks. So next page. Please skip it. There's some critical points in the existing system, the weaknesses. There's because the PRO and the controlling authority are the same. There's kind of lack of control. ENGET is the system operator. The integration of the informal sector is not part of ECO-Lef because you have to be formalized to be part of the system, an official part. There's no sorting at the source. A lot of the budget is not reliable. The importers, not all the importers, fillers, producers pay their share to the ECO-Lef system, and not all pay taxes, so there's an underfinancing of the system. As there's also an underfinancing of the waste management in Tunisia. Next. We carried out sorting analysis to see what is the possible share of recyclables, and we especially analyzed the share of packaging. Normally the sorting analyses are not that differentiated, and we realized campaigns in 3 different areas, and these are the results. So you can see in Sidi Bou Said, that's quite wealthy area, there's 39% of the residual waste is packaging material, all materials, of course. Next slide. The challenges and chances within this project, the adoption and change of an existing system is not as easy as building up a complete new system. There is the existing eco-tax, and there is, of course, a resistance of the possibility of paying double. So this has to be integrated. We developed some possible solutions and discussed it also with the Ministry of Finance. The economic and social situation is always a topic. So if the prices are rising, it's not easy to discuss an EPR scheme. The change and role of responsibilities on the municipal level is a topic, because there were big changes in Tunisia in the last years. The administrative structures and, of course, the responsible person changed, and the underfunding of the waste management sector is also a topic, but it's a challenge. That's a chance too, because EPR is a big chance to have a share covered of the waste that is disposed. There are also problems with new landfills in Tunisia, and the discussions about pre-treatment of waste are going on. So EPR could be an important part in the solution. We have discussed with producers and authorities, next slide, and agreed about some main points with them. So NGET should be the competent authority for authorization of a PR and monitoring. There should be a private-run producer-responsible organization, non-profit, and with full cost responsibility. And all companies should be responsible. Though no threshold of, for example, 5 or 10 tons put on the market, all companies that are identified as producer companies should be part of the scheme. And all packaging waste should be included, and not only the share with the market value that isn't a solution for the problems that are existing. And the financial and organizational responsibility should be taken over by the producers and importers. And of course, solution for eco-tax, formalization of the informal sector, and at least at the last slide, lessons learned. There should be, not so fast, give me 1 more minute. There should be a strong governmental involvement to enforce the standards and the targets. You should have a very reliable contact persons that support this project. So changing contact persons is always a challenge in such a project that is running about 2 or 3 years. Participative approach is very important. Capacity building, as for example the toolbox, but then in more detail for the country. You should consider the small collectors and the recyclers within the concept. We had some discussions with them, and that was very important for us too, to learn their specific topics and problems and questions. The NGOs should be involved in Tunisia, were involved in Tunisia in the discussions, and they support the idea. A lot of NGOs are important in environmental education projects and in waste separation and so on. And the role of the municipalities must be well defined, clear legal framework, of course, you know how important that is. And transparency in the process is very important, and later on in the scheme. So thank you very much. I hope I didn't take too much time, and I'm curious about your questions.
Thank you, Sabine.